September 16th, 1899, Volume 2, Effects and Value of Suffering Only for God. This morning my adorable Jesus came, and since I feared it might be the devil, I said to him, "Allow me to sign your forehead with the cross." And in the very act of saying this, I signed him, and so I remained more reassured and tranquil. Now blessed Jesus seemed tired and wanted to rest in me, and since I too felt tired from the sufferings of the past days, especially because of his very few visits, I felt the necessity to rest in him. So, after arguing for a little while together, he told me, "The life of the heart is love. I am like an infirm person who is burning with fever and keeps looking for refreshment, for a relief from the fire that devours him. My fever is love, but from where do I extract the refreshments and the reliefs which are most suitable for the fire that consumes me? From the pains and toils suffered by souls beloved to me, only for love of me. Many times I wait and wait for that moment in which the soul turns to me to tell me, 'Lord, only for love of you do I want to suffer this pain.' Ah yes, these are the reliefs and refreshments most suitable for me, which cheer me and dampen the fire that consumes me." After this, he threw himself into my arms, languishing, in order to rest. While Jesus was resting, I understood many things about the words he had spoken, especially about suffering for love of him. O coin of inestimable value! If all of us knew it, we would compete with one another to suffer more. But I believe we are all short-sighted in knowing this coin so precious, and this is why one does not reach the knowledge of it. September 16th, 1900, Volume 4, Turmoils in Andria. Continuing to come, my lovable Jesus shared with me various pains of his passion, and then he transported me outside of myself, showing me the neighboring towns. In particular, it seemed to me it was Andria, and if the Lord does not make use of his omnipotence for their chastisement, the turmoils will get serious. More so, since it seemed that there was the incitement of some priest to these turmoils, which embittered our Lord more. Then, after I visited various churches together with blessed Jesus, doing acts of reparation and adoration for the many profanations committed in the churches, Jesus told me, "My daughter, let me pour a little bit, for the bitternesses are such and so many that I cannot swallow them alone, and my heart cannot bear them." So he poured and he disappeared, returning other times without telling me anything else. September 16th, 1906, Volume 7, The Sheer Truth, Naked and Simple, is the most powerful magnet to draw hearts. As the confessor told me that Monsignor did not want people to come visit me, so that I might not be distracted, I said to him, "You have given this obedience more than once, but it is never sorted out. It is done for a little while, and then things go back as before. While if you give me the obedience not to speak any more, my silence would drive everyone away." Now, having received communion, I said to the Lord, "If it pleases you, I would like to know how things are in your sight. You know the state of violence in which I find myself when I am with creatures, because with you alone I feel comfortable. I cannot understand why they want to come. I show myself rustic. I use no means to attract them, but rather unpleasant manners. Why they want to come, I don't know. Oh heavens, grant that I may remain alone." At that moment he said to me, "My daughter, the sheer truth, naked and simple, is the most powerful magnet to draw hearts, and to dispose them to face any sacrifice for love of the truth, and of the people who revealed this truth. Who disposed the martyrs to shed their blood? The truth. Who gave to many other saints the strength to conduct a pure and unblemished life in the midst of so many battles? The truth, and a naked, simple, and disinterested truth. This is why creatures want to come to you. Ah, my daughter, in these sad times, how hard it is to find someone who would manifest this naked truth, even among the clergy, the religious, and devout people. Their speaking and operating always nurses something human, of interest, or other things, and the truth is manifested as though covered or veiled. So the person who receives is not touched by the naked truth, but by the interest or the other human purpose in which the truth has been wrapped, and he does not receive the grace and the influence which the truth contains. This is why so many sacraments, so many confessions, are wasted, profaned, and without fruit, even though I do not abstain from giving them light. But they do not listen to me, because they think to themselves that if they did so, they would lose their prestige, their being well liked, their nature would no longer find satisfaction, and they would go against their own interests. But oh, how they deceive themselves! In fact, one who leaves everything for love of the truth will superabound in everything more profusely than others. Therefore, as much as you can, do not neglect to manifest this naked and simple truth. It is understood, always complying to the obedience of the one who directs you. But as the opportunity arises, manifest the truth. All that regards charity I have said in a veiled manner, and since obedience had told me to write everything in detail, I had the impression as if I had not obeyed. As I asked our Lord, he told me that it was fine as it was, because one who finds himself in those defects would understand. September 16, 1921, Volume 13, Jesus Mocked by Herod. How these pains are renewed by creatures. Through his acts, Jesus molded our acts in his will. I was doing the hour of the Passion, in which my sweet Jesus was in the palace of Herod, clothed as a madman and mocked. And my always lovable Jesus, making himself seen, told me, "My daughter, not only then was I clothed like a madman, sneered at and mocked, but creatures continue to give me these pains. Even more, I am under continuous mockeries, and by all kinds of people. If a person goes to confession and does not maintain his resolutions not to offend me, this is a mockery that he makes of me. If a priest confesses, preaches, administers the sacraments, and his life does not correspond to the words he says and to the dignity of the sacraments he administers, he mocks me as many times for as many words as he says and for as many sacraments as he administers. While I give them new life in the sacraments, they give me scorns and mockeries, and by profaning them, they prepare for me the garment to clothe me as a madman. If superiors command sacrifice, virtue, prayer, and disinterest to their subjects, while they conduct a life of comfort, of vice, and of interest, these are as many mockeries that they make of me. If civilian and ecclesiastical leaders want the observance of the laws, and they are the first transgressors, These are mockeries that they make of me. Oh, how many mockeries they make of me! They are so many that I am tired of them, especially when they put the poison of evil under good. Oh, how they make fun of me, as if I were their amusement and their pastime. But sooner or later, justice will make fun of them by punishing them severely. You pray and repair for these mockeries which grieve me so much, and are the cause for which I do not make myself known for who I am. Afterwards, coming back again, as I was fusing all of myself in the divine will, he told me, "Dearest daughter of my will, I anxiously await your fusions in my will. You must know that as I thought in my will, I kept molding your thoughts in my will, preparing the place for them. As I worked, I molded your works in my will, and so with all the rest. Now, whatever I did not do for myself, since I did not need it, but for you. This is why I await you in my will, that you may come and take the places which my humanity prepared for you, and over my moldings, come and do yours. Only then am I content, and I receive complete glory, when I see you do what I did." September 16th, 1925, Volume 18. Jesus was always the same in his pains. To be always the same is a divine virtue. The silence of Jesus. My days are ever more bitter because of the long privations of my sweet Jesus. His will alone is left to me, as precious inheritance of the so many visits he made to my poor soul. And now I have been left alone, forgotten by the one who formed my life, so much so that it seemed to me that we were fused together, and that neither could he be without me, nor I without him. And while I think, where did the one go who loved me so much? What have I done that he has left me? Oh, Jesus, come back, for I can take no more. And while I would like to abandon myself to sorrow, and think of my great misfortune of having lost the one in whom I had enclosed all my hopes and my happiness, the holy divine volition imposes itself on me, making me follow the course of my acts in his adorable will, and it almost prevents me from grieving more for being without my only good. So I remain as though petrified, intrepid, all alone, without the slightest comfort, either from heaven or from the earth. Now, while I was in this state, I was thinking about various pains of the Passion of Jesus, who, making himself seen for a little while, told me, "My daughter, in all my pains I was always the same. I never changed. My gaze was always sweet, my face always serene, my words always calm and dignified. In my whole person I had such a quality of manners that if they had wanted to recognize me as their Redeemer, merely by my way, always the same, in everything and for everything, they would have recognized me. It is true that my pains were so many as to eclipse me, and surround me like many clouds, but this says nothing. After the heat of the pains, I would reappear in the midst of my enemies like majestic sun, with my usual serenity, and with my same manners, always equal and peaceful. To be always the same is only of God, and of the true children of God. The way that is always equal to itself impresses the divine character in the soul, and reveals the operating of creatures as pure and holy. On the other hand, a changing character is of creatures, and it is a sign of passions that roar within the human heart, that tyrannize it, in such a way as to show an unpleasant character also on the outside, which displeases everyone. Therefore, I recommend to you that you be always the same, with me, with yourself, and with others, the same in the pains, and even in my very privation. The unchanging character must be indelible in you, and even though the pains of my privation knock you down and form the clouds of sorrow inside and outside of you, your unchanging manners will be light which will dispel these clouds, and will reveal how, though hidden, I dwell within you. After this, I continued to think about the pains of the passion of my adorable Jesus, with the nail of his privation in my heart. And my lovable Jesus made himself seen in my interior, all taciturn, and so afflicted as to arouse pity. And I said to him, "My love, why are you silent? It seems to me that you do not want to tell me anything any more, nor confide to me your secrets and your pains any longer." And Jesus, all goodness, but afflicted, told me, "My daughter, being silent says something greater than what speaking says. To be silent is the decision of one who, not wanting to be dissuaded, keeps silent. The silence of a father with a beloved son of his, while in the midst of other unruly sons, is a sign that he wants to strike the perverted sons. Do you think it is nothing that I do not come to you, and that I am sparing in the sharing of my pains with you? Ah, my daughter, it isn't nothing. On the contrary, it is something great. As I do not come to you, my justice becomes filled with scourges in order to strike man, so much so that all the past evils, the earthquakes, the wars, will be as nothing compared to the evils which will come, and to the great war and revolution which they are preparing. Sins are so many that men do not deserve that I share my pains with you, in order to free them from the scourges deserved. Therefore have patience. My will make up for my visible presence, though I remain hidden in you. And if it were not so, you could not have kept the pace in doing your usual rounds in my will. It is I, who, though hidden, do them within you, and you follow the one whom you do not see. However, once my justice has completed the filling of scourges, I will be with you like before. Therefore, courage, wait for me and do not fear." Now, while he was saying this, I found myself outside of myself in the midst of the world. In almost all nations, one could see preparations for war, new, more tragic ways of fighting, which struck fright at the mere sight, and then the great human blindness, which, becoming yet more blind, acted like a beast, not like a man, and because it was blind, it could not see that while wounding others, it wounded itself. Then, all frightened, I found myself back inside myself, all alone, without my Jesus, and with the nail in my heart, that the one whom I love had departed from me, leaving me alone and abandoned. And while I was raving and agonizing because of the pain, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior and sighing because of my hard state, told me, "My daughter, calm yourself, calm yourself. I am within you. I do not leave you. And besides, how can I leave you? Look, my will is everywhere. If you are in my will, I do not know where to go, nor do I find a place in order to move away from you. I would have to render my will limited and gather it in one point in order to leave you, but I cannot do this either. My immensity extends everywhere, and my nature renders all that belongs to me immense. Therefore immense is my will, my power, my love, my wisdom, and so forth. So how can I leave you if I find you everywhere in my will? Therefore, be sure that I do not leave you, and plunge yourself ever more deeply into the immensity of the abyss of my will. September 16, 1928, Volume 24. In conceiving, the Virgin conceived the kingdom of the Fiat. In being born, she gave back to us the rights to possess it. Difficulties in writing. Wounds that Jesus receives. My abandonment in the Fiat is continuous, and while I was following its acts, my poor mind paused to think about the conception of the Celestial Queen and her great fortune of being exempted from original sin. And my beloved Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, the seed with which the celestial sovereign was conceived was taken from the human stock, because she too had her human life as all other creatures, as I too had. However, there is this great difference not conceded to any other creature. Before her beautiful soul was conceived, my Fiat, with its omnipotence, concentrated its rays in this seed, and with its light and heat, it annihilated the evil that was in it, and made it die, purifying the seed completely, and rendering it pure and holy, and exempt from original sin. And then the Immaculate baby girl was conceived in this seed." So the whole portent of the Immaculate Conception was operated by my divine will. It did not make another human seed, nor did it destroy it, but it purified it, and with its heat and light it removed from it all the humors that this seed had contracted from the sin of Adam, and it restored in her the human seed, just as it had come out of our creative hands. Therefore, as the little Virgin Queen was conceived, the kingdom of my divine will was conceived in her, and in the human generations, because in forming and giving surprising graces to one creature, in her we look at the whole humanity of the human family, as if it were one alone. See, then, as the Virgin was conceived in this seed, exempt from every stain, which was all work of the divine Fiat, its divine kingdom was conceived again within humanity. And as the Immaculate little Virgin was born, the right to be able to possess it was given back. Now when I came upon earth to take on human flesh, I made use of the seed of the Sovereign of Heaven, and it can be said that we work together to form again this kingdom of ours in the human generations. So there is nothing left but to know it in order to possess it. And this is why I am manifesting what belongs to my kingdom and to my divine will, so that the creature may cover its ways, follow our steps, and take possession of it. And my divine will, with its light and heat, will repeat the prodigy of removing the bad humors that the human seed possesses. And in order to be sure, it will place the seed of its light and heat, and will constitute itself life of that seed. And so they will exchange possession. My divine will take possession of the seed in order to form in it its life of light, of heat, and sanctity. And the creature will return to take new possession of the kingdom of my divine Fiat. See then, my daughter, everything is ready. Nothing else is needed but to make it known. And this is why I so much yearn that what regards my divine will become known, to cast into creatures the desire to possess a good so great, so that my will, drawn by their desires, may concentrate its luminous rays, and with its heat perform the prodigy of giving back the right to possess its kingdom of peace, of happiness, and of sanctity. After this having to write what Jesus had told me, I found it almost impossible. And as I tried the first, the second, the third time, and seeing that I could not manage, I thought to myself that blessed Jesus no longer wanted me to write, and therefore I too should not want it. So I dismissed the thought of trying harder, but then I wanted to try again, and I seemed to manage, and with even greater ease than other times. So I thought to myself, and why so many sacrifices, so many difficulties, attempts and new attempts to write, without managing to do it? And after so many difficulties, doing it with ease? And my sweet Jesus, coming out from within my interior, told me, "My daughter, do not be concerned. I wanted to take pleasure from you a little bit, and to enjoy the sweetness squeezed out of your sacrifices. As you tried to write and could not manage, and tried again, I felt wounded by your love in wanting to sacrifice yourself to fulfill my divine will for you to write. And I, to take pleasure from your wounds, rendered you incapable of keeping your eyes open in order to write. So don't you want your Jesus to amuse himself with you and to enjoy a little bit? Moreover, you must know that the sacrifice made to fulfill my will forms pure, noble, and divine blood for the soul, just as food forms blood for the body. And I, dipping my brush of love in this blood, amuse myself in forming in her, more beautiful, more charming, my image in the creature. Therefore let me do, and you think only of doing my divine will, and I will do something more beautiful in the little newborn of my adorable will." September 16th, 1931, Volume 29, Admirable Effects of the Light of the Divine Will. How heaven opens itself over operative souls. How our acts are like many breaths that make the good mature. My poor mind seems to be able to do nothing other than wander in the divine fiat. And oh, how painful it is for me when, even just for brief instants, I am saddened by some shadow or thought that is not all will of God. Oh, then I feel my happiness breaking, the current of light, of peace, breaking. Alas, I feel the weight of my unhappy will. On the other hand, if nothing that is not will of God enters into me, I feel happy. I live in the immensity of its light. Rather, I cannot even see where this light ends, that forms in me the celestial dwelling of perennial peace. O power of the supreme will, you who know how to change the human into divine, ugliness into beauty, pains into joys, should they even remain pains, do not leave me for one instant. Let your arms of light hold me so tightly that all other things, dispelled by your light, may not dare to molest me and to break my happiness. But while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, as though wanting to approve and confirm what I was thinking, told me, "My daughter, how beautiful is my divine will, isn't it? It alone is the bearer of true happiness and of the greatest fortune to the poor creature, who by doing her will does nothing other than break her own happiness, break the current of the light, and change her fortune into the greatest misfortune. And as the creature disposes herself to do my will, So it keeps rehabilitating her in the lost goods, because the substance of my divine will is light, and everything it does can be called effects of this light. So for one who lets herself be dominated by it, one will be the act, but as the substance of light that it possesses, she will feel its many effects that it will produce as the effect of its light, the works, the steps, the word, the thoughts, the heartbeats of my will in the creature. Therefore she can say, I am a single act of supreme will. Everything else is nothing other than the effects of its light. The effects of this light are admirable. They take on all resemblances, all forms, of works, of steps, of words, of pains, of prayers, of tears, but all animated by the light, forming such variety of beauties that your Jesus remains enraptured. Just like the sun that animates everything with its light, but does not destroy or change things, rather it places from its own and communicates the variety of colors, the diversity of sweetnesses, making them acquire a virtue and a beauty that they did not possess. So my divine will is, without destroying anything of what the creature does. On the contrary, it animates them with its light, it embellishes them, and communicates to them its divine power. After this, I continued my abandonment in the divine Fiat by following its acts, and my beloved Jesus added, My daughter, each good comes out of God matured, and this maturation is formed between God and the soul. See, by doing your acts, you expose yourself to the rays of the divine sun, and as you undergo the heat and the light, your acts do not remain arid, insipid, but matured, and you, together with them, remain matured in the love, in the divine knowledges, in everything you do. And I, seeing you matured in those acts, prepare in me other love to give you, and other truths to tell you. And since of everything that comes out of me, nothing is sterile, but everything is fecund and well matured in the live flame of my love, you receive the virtue of forming new maturations in you. This is why many times I am waiting for the completion of your acts, to give you the surprise of letting you know other truths. These, like many breaths of light and of heat, finish maturing in your soul the goods and the truths that your Jesus has communicated to you. See, then, the necessity of your acts in order to dispose yourself to receive other knowledges on my divine Fiat, and to let me find in you the continuation of your acts in order to render them mature. Otherwise, what could I do? I would remain like sun that, while it goes through the earth, finds neither a flower to color nor a fruit to mature. So all the admirable effects that the sun contains would remain within its light. The earth would receive nothing. Therefore heaven opens itself over operative souls, the miraculous force of the light of my divine volition, not over idle souls, but over those who work, who sacrifice, who love, who have always something to do for me. Rather, you must know that the beatitudes of heaven pour themselves over the earth, and go to place themselves in the soul who lives and operates in my will, because they do not want to leave her lacking the celestial joys and happinesses, while she forms a single will with heaven. However, while the blessed swim in the divine joys, they acquire nothing of merit. On the other hand, with the pilgrim soul, they not only make her happy, but add the merit, because for one who does my will upon earth, everything is meritorious, the word, the prayer, the breath, and even the joys convert into merit and into new gains. End of September 16th. Fiat.